Hello everyone, welcome to today's Office 365 Powering Productivity session. My name's Iain. I'm going to be taking you through basically a quick overview of Office 365 and kind of key ways that you can increase the productivity and really just give you some top tips around utilising the software. Now, the session is being recorded, so for those of you that would like a copy, please let me know. All of you should have an email from me which was sent out about an hour and a half ago, so just let me know and I'll forward you out a link where you can download the session. So, can everyone see my screen? And you should be able to hear me, I'm hoping. So if someone could just send me a message, that'd be lovely. You should be able to see the main chat window just to the left hand side. So if I said a smiley face, perfect. That's all good. So the session's going to take about half an hour, and then once we've finished, there's going to be about a 15-minute to half an hour kind of Q&A session afterwards. There was a survey that was sent out to the first group of attendees, so about 50 people. So if anyone has got any questions, that's when we'll kind of pick up with them. So let's go and have a look at the content for this morning's session. So the first things we're going to do is we're going to be looking at the right tools for the job, and this is going to be a really quick kind of overview of the overall kind of tool package within Office 365. Next, we'll then go and have a look at collaboration, utilizing sharing functions and OneDrive. We'll then go through and have a look at the benefits of utilizing stuff like desktop keyboard shortcuts and really useful bits of functionality that you can use to maximize kind of Office. Briefly, we'll then look into the mobility function where you can start to play around with Office actually on the go. So again, it's giving you as a business a new way of giving your or empowering your colleagues. And then last but not least, we'll then go through and have a look at the development section, which is really where we'll just have a quick kind of overview of the kind of things that you can do to give yourselves and your employees a better overview of Office 365. So let's start off at the right tools for the job. So one of the first questions I asked on the questionnaire that was sent out to the first bunch of group of employees was, how many applications do you think come with Office 365? Generally, when people say Office, they automatically think of stuff like Excel, PowerPoint, kind of Outlook, the kind of what I'd call the core applications. And essentially, I gave 4 answers, so you can have 7, 11, 22 or 27. So this is how people voted. So 40% of people thought there were 7 applications, about 25% thought there were 11, then 20% thought there were 22 applications, and just shy of 15% thought there were 27% or 27 applications. And the actual figure can vary depending on the type of Office 365 subscription you have. But there are between 22 and 27 applications. And most of these aren't actually found on your computer. They're all found up into the cloud, which is where most people don't actually start to utilize the full functionality of 365. So just as a quick overview of what you find in Office 365, here are a couple of the applications. So you've got your standard one like Word, Excel, PowerPoint, kind of Outlook, which most people are familiar with. You'll then find you've got more unfamiliar ones, stuff like Skype for Business, Yammer, Delve, Video Portal, Groups and Planners. You've got Teams, loads and loads of different applications. And about 90% of them all live in the cloud. So you don't access them from your desktop like you would do a standard application. You've got a little version installed locally. They're all stored through your web browser. And I'll go through in a second and show you what they look like. So this is what I'd say the core service offering. So you've got stuff like other applications like Power Apps, SharePoint, Staff Hub, Project Visio, To-Do List, Tasks and Dynamics. And one of the big things about Office 365 is Microsoft are constantly releasing new applications, which for me as a trainer can keep me constantly on my toes, as Microsoft release stuff sometimes with very little supporting documentation. They just go, here you go, and then the next thing you know, you've got a new bit of software, which usually they'll put into a beta mode, so you can go in and have a play with it before you actually get a chance to utilize it. Now, what these applications look like is essentially, here's my Office 365 window. If I click into my apps screen up in the top left hand corner, here are all of those different apps. And like I said, most of them aren't actually available through my desktop. So you can get stuff like Microsoft Forms, which we'll have a look at in a second. You've then got OneDrive and OneNote. And my top tip whenever I'm kind of training people in 365 is to get them away from just thinking about the apps which they see on their computer. Go into the cloud and explore the applications which are available there, because they really are geared towards giving you more power and productivity. So we'll come back to this bit in a second. So standout applications for 365 are really these kind of 6. So the first one, you've got Planner, which is for those of you that run any form of projects or work from or have a team and want to get people to kind of utilize task management tools, Planner is a really, really effective way of managing that process. It's not quite as hardcore as Microsoft Project, so it's nice and easy to use, but what it lets you do is basically create very easy to understand project plans, which you can then start to share tasks and add files to, and that's quite new, and that's really, really nice. Next, you've then got one of Microsoft's new programs, which is called Teams. Historically, Microsoft have used a communication platform for Skype for Business, and that was essentially what we're using now to attend the call. And that program is basically going to be kind of come end of life about 2020, and it's going to be replaced by this thing called Microsoft Teams. And Teams takes all of the functionality that you'll find in Skype for Business and then adds loads of additional sharing functionality. And all of these applications that I'm talking through, at the end of the session, I'll send you guys out a big pile of material just to so you can get a bit more of an overview about what they do. But Teams is Microsoft's new communication platform. And again, it's really, really useful. And what you'll start to see is over about the next kind of 18 months, businesses start to move away from that Skype for Business model, which has been so prevalent across the Microsoft kind of app sphere over the last kind of about 3-4 years, and move more towards Teams. Next, you then have Microsoft Forms. And this is essentially Microsoft's equivalent of SurveyMonkey. The nice thing is that if you've got an Office 365 account, it's already there, it's completely free. You guys will get an example of what this looks like when I send out my post-course survey. And again, it will really just give you a feel of what you can do with forms. The nice thing about Forms is this ties in with Excel, so you can get real-time feedback from users. So as you guys are filling in the feedback, it will literally just kind of plop onto my Excel spreadsheet, and it will update any graphs and charts and presentations which I have based around the content of that form. Next is SharePoint. SharePoint's one of these programs that has been knocking around with Microsoft for years and years and years. Back in the day, SharePoint was very hard to utilize. You needed to have a lot of knowledge about how the application worked to kind of make the most of it. With SharePoint 365, what Microsoft have done is they've made that functionality a lot more approachable. And it means that people who aren't particularly technical can get into SharePoint and actually start to utilize some of the core functionality. Don't get me wrong, when you start wanting more advanced functionality, say for instance version control and naming conventions attached to files, and you want to add in workflows, that stuff does still get quite technical, but the bare bones of SharePoint is a lot easier to utilize. And in your business, if you've got 365, you've already got SharePoint, but it's again a really nice little application which when you start to have a play with it, it's very similar to utilizing OneDrive. Next, you've then got Power BI, which is Microsoft's all-singing, all-dancing reporting tool. And for those of you that like figures and metrics and spreadsheets and databases and stuff, Microsoft wanted to give you a set of tools which could basically plug into multiple areas. So you can have multiple spreadsheets, you can plug into SQL databases, all kinds of different bits directly into Power BI, and you can suck that information directly in and then essentially kind of create dashboards off that information. Now, Power BI by itself requires a very kind of specialist trainer because of how in-depth the application is, but it's one of these things that lots of companies are just starting to get the kind of hang of how to utilize it. But again, it's all part of Microsoft's drive to really kind of centralize people's reporting requirements. Instead of having multiple tools and multiple dashboards, it's all about all the data in one place. And last but not least, it's most probably one of my favorites, which is OneNote, an old classic. This one's been around since 2003. It's gone through multiple iterations, and Microsoft have really started to make a push to get OneNote more utilized by businesses. And at the moment, there's two different versions of OneNote. You've got OneNote Classic, which comes with Office 2016, and then you've got new OneNote, which is integrated into Windows 10. OneNote is essentially just a computer-based notebook, is the nearest way, the simplest way I can describe it. And what it does is it gives people who are very reliant on their task books or on their notebooks the ability to be able to store all of that information electronically and then very quickly share it with other people. And they're my kind of top applications that I say that come with 365. Most of them, such as tasks, teams, and forms and OneNote, are really, really easy to use, and getting them deployed into your business can make a massive change. The ones which are a little bit more complicated are more SharePoint and Power BI. But again, those applications are still really, really useful when used in an organization, and all you need is just someone a little bit technical to help you kind of get going with those applications. So let's have a look at my next question, which was, how do you share documents? So I had four options for this one, which is will email a copy of your document to the relevant people and parties who I want to collaborate with. Next was then share with Office 365, and next was we'll save the document in a shared folder and ask relevant parties to update directly. There was then another option, and most people kind of said a mix of two, or they share directly using SharePoint, which is very similar to sharing with Office 365, such as OneDrive. And then last but not least, most probably the most archaic, which was print out a hard copy, get people to mark it up, and then basically collect all the printed copies and then make the relevant changes to the Word document. And again, this bit was quite nice to see. So the results were most people will email out a copy. Next, you then had about 25% of people would share via Office 365, followed by 20% of people who would basically put the file into a shared folder and let people access that via a network drive. 15% would use a combination of all three. And thankfully, only 10% of people who responded would print out a hard copy. Now, one of the big things about sharing documentation is, especially in this day and age where the collaboration really is key to productivity, is really kind of doing stuff like sharing via email isn't particularly efficient on the fact that you can have multiple, you could send out one document to 15 people, and then when you get those documents returned, you've then got to basically read through 15 documents, which in itself can be quite time consuming. You then got, we'll save a document in a shared drive. Again, this is no problem. Technically, it's perfectly fine. But again, difficulties with it being is you can lose control over that document. People can copy and paste it into different parts of their hard drive, make different versions, and again, you can lose elements of version control. Again, depending on what the respondents want. I mean, the key answers I got were tend not to collaborate with people, so that individual works by themselves, do a mix of all the above, and then share with SharePoint. And again, SharePoint would be the kind of best option. And then last but not least, you've then got print out a hard copy and ask relevant parties to mark up the document and return with feedback, which, as you can see, isn't particularly time effective. So what Microsoft have done is, with the power of OneDrive, they've made sharing documents and files and folders really, really easy. And it also comes with two core benefits. The first one is you as individuals remain in control. And the next one is it's also very, very secure. And one of the really nice features of this is it's fully integrated into your core Microsoft applications. You don't have to go and drag a file into Outlook, then send it out. You can do it from one click from a Word document. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to open up Word, and I'm just going to go through very quickly and create a Word document and show you how that works. So here's my Word document. I'm just going to go and generate some text. So there's my text, and now I'm going to go and save that. So I'm just going to click on Save. Now, as you can see, I've now then got multiple locations where I can save that document. I'm going to save it to my OneDrive, and I'm going to save it to my demo folder. And I'm just going to put that as test. I'm just going to replace the existing file. So that document is now saved to the cloud. Oh, no, it's not. It's saved to a folder where I've already saved it to. So let's go and save that to a slightly different location. Let's call that test 2. It went so smoothly when I ran through the demonstration this morning. So that file is now saved to the cloud. So one of the key benefits of saving stuff to OneDrive is the document auto-saves. So every time I make any core changes to this document, top left-hand corner, I've got this button up here that says auto-save, which means I no longer have to press Control and S to save the document. But one of the big things it does is it means I can share this file directly with my colleagues. So in this case, I'll just come up to the top right-hand corner, click on Share, and I'm going to go and share this with a couple of my colleagues. So I'm going to go and choose Pippa, and I'm going to also go and share with Sarah. And then I'm just going to click on Send. Now, before I do that, I can also change a couple of options. So at the moment, this sharing option is only for people within my organisation. But I can click onto there and I can do stuff like share with specific people. They can be internal to my company or external to my company. And the nice thing about this process is that it's all protected by two-factor authentication. So if I do share a file with an external party, only the person that I share it with can access that content. If I want the file only to be read-only, I can put a little tick in that box. And I even have the ability in the latest version of OneDrive where I can specify that the file cannot be downloaded. So if you can be sharing this document out to someone, say for instance if it's a tender and you just want someone to have a look at it, you don't want them to be able to download it, you have that function as well. It's usually stored in a little box just down here. The reason why it's not on my version of OneDrive is because Mirus internally don't utilize that functionality. But at the moment I'm just going to go and share it with those individuals. I click on Apply, and then I'm just going to go and click on Send. And what this will do is this will now generate a little email or a notification which will appear on those individuals' desktops. And in a second, I'm hoping that Pippa, who should be on the call, will get an email and she will be able to start co-authoring the document with me. So there's Pippa, she's just popped up here, and in a second, I'm hoping Pippa will start to format the document. So myself and Pippa are now co-authoring this document in real time. So you can have up to about 125 people co-authoring a document. So if you can see there, you've got Pippa's cursor just moving around there. That's where Pippa's adding content, and she can add images, and Sarah's about to join and she's about to start co-authoring. Another nice feature is the fact that I can actually start a conversation up with them. And this conversation will actually sit within the document itself. So on Pippa and Sarah's screen, they've just got a random message just appear saying, "Hello, ladies." So as you see, what it lets you do is real-time co-authoring. So it's a really, really useful piece of functionality. And the nice thing about this is it doesn't just work in Word, it works in PowerPoint, Excel. So for those of you that share or try to work on multiple Excel spreadsheets at the same time and try to open the document that another individual's working on, what it will do is it will actually let multiple people utilize that spreadsheet. You won't get that lovely message saying Bob is utilizing this spreadsheet. You can't open it. So that's sharing, and it's, as you saw, really simple one-click functionality. So I'm going to go and close that document down. And one of the nice things about the sharing function, as I said, is it's completely secure. So you don't have to worry about that document being shared outside of your network of people who you've shared it with. So let's move on to the next section, which is all around a quick overview of how OneDrive works. And the nice thing about OneDrive is it really does just work. A lot of people, when they hear the word cloud computing and cloud storage, they can get a little bit confused with what it does and how it works. And one of the nice things that Microsoft have done is they've made it as simple as possible. So here I've got my laptop, and over here I've got the cloud. So again, to utilize the cloud, you have to be connected via the internet. So on my laptop, I've created my file. And what will happen is, as soon as I created the file and I save it into the cloud, that file will automatically be uploaded into the cloud. Just like I did with the Word document that I just showed you, I didn't have to do anything special. All I did was I selected where I wanted to save it and then clicked on Save. Next, that Word document will then sync back with my local machine, and that syncing process automatically happens in the background. As soon as you connect to the internet, Microsoft will, or the Microsoft Word and the OneDrive program will just automatically keep that syncing process going. And as soon as something's up in the cloud, what it means is I can access that file from any internet enabled device in the world. I've even seen OneDrive be installed on a computer-enabled fridge, which was quite interesting and completely pointless. But the person wanted the ability to be able to have their kind of shopping list appear on essentially on an iPad that was glued to their fridge, for the purpose of the fact that as they were taking stuff out, they could mark it on and mark it off. And as I said, that file, as soon as it's in the cloud, then gives you access to that content on almost any mobile device, whether it be an iPad, iPhone, it can be an Android device. So it means that even if you're working from home remotely, what it does is it gives you that ability to work, or let your workers or let yourselves access all of their files and content in a secure manner. And like I said, that file will just basically keep whizzing around all of those devices. So OneDrive, like I said, is a really useful piece of technology. For those of you that want to know a bit more about OneDrive, we've got a video up which basically explains in a bit more detail about how to utilize it and how to make the most of it. But OneDrive really is the core of getting the most out of Office in 2019. So my next tip for making yourself more productive is utilizing keyboard shortcuts. And this is really kind of old school trainer talk. Whenever I do any training with internal or external groups, the first thing I'll do is I'll always give them a breakdown of all of the different shortcut keys. And most users kind of go, well, what's the difference between using your mouse? So I'll just give you a really quick demonstration. So here I'm back in my Word document. So let's say I want to cut some text. So again, I can highlight it. I can then right click, go cut, and then select the document, select where I want it to go, and then paste the text in by right clicking and then going to one of the paste options. So as you saw, there was about 4 or 5 different clicks. So once you've mastered keyboard shortcuts, it's just a case of hitting Control X on your keyboard, scrolling down, and then hitting Control V. And what it does is keyboard shortcuts are key to speeding up your ability to be able to utilize any Microsoft program. And I really can't stress how important that is. And what you'll find is you'll end up working in a kind of symbiotic way between using your mouse. So for instance, you might decide that you like cutting with the mouse, but then pasting with your keyboard shortcuts. And when we finish today's session, what I'll do is I'll send you out a vast amount of documentation of all of the key keyboard shortcuts for all of the core Microsoft applications. For those of you that want to go really hardcore in the wonderful world of keyboard shortcuts, if you hit Alt on your keyboard, what it'll do is it will basically give you access to all of the kind of core shortcuts. So for instance, if I press H on my keyboard, or if I go to N even, it will take me directly to the Insert tab. And what you'll find is, are you going to use all of the keyboard shortcuts that are available? No, but what I would do is think about how you work, what functions and what kind of options you use within 365, and memorize those keyboards, because it really will speed up how you work. People don't really kind of seem to understand that by them selecting text, right clicking and using their mouse to drive their core functions really does slow them down, because what it does is it takes their hands off the keyboard and basically means that your hand goes onto your mouse. And the key thing to speeding yourself up with 365 is about trying to keep your fingers on the keyboard as much as possible. So keyboard shortcuts are really, really important. And again, like I said, I'll share a big pile of documentation around basically a quick overview of all of the core applications and their key keyboard shortcuts. So next is then mobility. And this is, again, just really utilizing the technology that Microsoft are giving you. So giving you the ability to utilize Office 365 on mobile devices, laptops, through your web browser. And this is one of the bits that most people don't even do with 365. So if you're out and about and you want to utilize your web browser, let's say, for instance, I've left my laptop at home or my laptop's died. Here is my OneDrive account. I can very quickly go into my web apps up in the top left-hand corner. Here's a copy of PowerPoint. And these are all of the PowerPoint presentations that I've saved to OneDrive. And if I click on this one here, here is the presentation that you guys are currently looking at. So I promise we haven't got too many slides to go. But what this lets me do is essentially work from any computer with a web browser. And it gives me, it's not fully functioned, so I always utilize the web version if I just need to make a quick edit. But it is about 75% of the functionality of the desktop powered apps. So if you find yourself in a bit of a bind, this is really, really useful. So I'll just go and minimize that. So as I said earlier, you can also get all of the mobile applications. So if your business relies on iPads or anything like that, you can also edit all of that content using your mobile devices. One thing I would say is, when utilizing those mobile devices, if you decide you want to go down that route within your business, do think about training. What generally I've found is most companies will remember to tell people how to use it on their laptops and their PCs, but when they come to utilizing the mobile devices, they don't really do anything with it. They just kind of go, oh, you can access Word on your iPhone, not really explaining the limitations of that application. One of the really nice things about the applications is they do feel just like Word, just kind of shrunk down, and with some of their core functionality kind of stripped out. But like I said, just for making very basic edits and updating documents, they've saved my life once or twice before. So next, I then asked, when was the last time you received some formal training on Office? And one of the big things with Office 365 is it's constantly evolving. I think Office 2019, as far as I know, is going to be the last kind of disk-based release for businesses. So Microsoft are really kind of pushing for all of their software to kind of move onto this cloud-based subscription process. So the kind of businesses which you still find today, say for instance, which use Office 2003, aren't really going to be kind of around, because historically, generally, most companies would kind of go from Office 2003 to potentially Office 2007, or then maybe skip a generation and go directly to Office 2010. Because those releases aren't going to really happen anymore, with Office 365, you get the latest version, which means that you also have constant updates, which you don't really notice. One day you'll just kind of log into Office and you'll just find there's a new button. So one of the recent updates was the fact that Word, for instance, now has a read aloud function. So I can actually get Word to proofread this document for me. So if I highlight some text and then I can go into review, if I click on this button here, my computer will read this text back to me. which when it comes to proofreading is really, really useful. Microsoft didn't really make a big song and dance about it. They just kind of stuck it in, and I was doing some training, and then all of a sudden my computer updated and this button turned up. So Microsoft always release an email, but sometimes, again, if you're not subscribed to their update emails, you'll just find new buttons appear. So training really is constant with 365, whether that be personal development where people are going off and educating themselves, or kind of more formal based training. Keeping ahead of the curve with 365 is key to making sure that you and your business are getting the most out of the system. So here are some statistics around training. So I asked, first question is, have you had any training in the last 12 months? 15% of respondents said yes. Next was, have you had training in the last 3 years? 10% of respondents said yes. Next was, have you had any training in the last 3 years, which was 25%. And probably the most shocking bit is 50% of people who responded, so I think we had about 35, 40 responses, said no, they'd never been trained on kind of Office or never received any formal training. And again, formal training doesn't just have to be sitting in a classroom with a trainer such as myself going through the products. That could also be self-education. So whoever these 50% of individuals are, it means that they're not leveraging the newest functionality within Office. And one of the big things Microsoft are pushing is they are making it a lot easier to do more complicated things. And if people don't know about this, they're then essentially wasting time. So making sure that people are educated and updated with what 365 can do and how they can utilize it within their job role really is key. And I know I'm a trainer and I'm supposed to say that, but it really is a fact. The amount of organizations I've gone into and they've deployed Office 365 and you've got them working in ways that would be outdated in 2003, let alone 2019, is quite scary. And sometimes the functionality is really easy to use, it's just that people don't know it's there. So my biggest tip for getting the most out of 365 is all about developing your people and developing yourself. In this wonderful age of technology, there is almost an unlimited amount of resources available both on the internet and from people like myself telling you how to get the most out of software. So first thing I'd say is make sure yourself and your teams and your businesses are provided the relevant development opportunities and time. And again, this isn't just about sending someone off on an Excel course. This is about giving people time to put what they've learned into practice. So if, for instance, if you have someone who utilizes Excel on a daily basis and they don't know stuff like VLOOKUPs and pivot tables and how to do infographics and all this kind of stuff, Microsoft Excel now has built-in kind of training material which can take you on a step-by-step guide on how to get the most out of that particular application, as well as the fact you can just go onto Google and go, how do I do this? Which obviously as an IT trainer, that's definitely not how I learn, but the tools and the resources are there. It's just a case of giving your teams and yourselves time to make the most of them. And the key benefits to you is it increases your efficiency, your productivity, as well as internal innovation. Most of the best ideas when it comes to technology will come from your staff because they're the people who are working on these, whatever the process is, and they go, well, I've seen that you can link two Excel spreadsheets together so that the data can be shared, or I've seen that if I stick the spreadsheet up in OneDrive, I can then have 15 to 125 people all accessing that data at the same time. So what it can do is it can remove a lot of those historical barriers that have been in place. And one of the bigger things is that it also drives engagement and the better usage of the software. Most you guys already pay for it, but you're not getting the benefit out of it. And again, that's driven by kind of self-education and businesses putting people forward. Next is identify and empower your technological champions. There'll always be people in businesses who just get technology, and there'll also be people in businesses who are a bit scared of it and don't really kind of just not shy away from it, but they'll wait for people to kind of come to them with a solution. By identifying who these kind of technical super users are and leveraging them, really does help drive innovation in your business. It also can mean that these people are in situ, so they're actually on site. So if people have got questions about how do I use Microsoft Forms, you don't have to go to an external source to find out. You can just go up to this single point of contact who could be a recognizable face and a respected person in your business, and really start to kind of push the benefits of Office 365. They can also help your business make smarter decisions. So if you're discussing a new process and you're looking at putting in quite a convoluted piece of software around this, say for instance you want to start to centralize all of your data, potentially that could be captured in somewhere like SharePoint, but you just don't know that SharePoint can do that kind of stuff. And by empowering these users, it can really help make massive kind of technological gains to your organization. Another big benefit is it helps drive local support and education within your teams. Most organizations, and some teams that I've worked with, what they assume is as soon as they've been on a training course, they're going to be an expert on a piece of software. That's not the way it works. When you've learned something, you need to put it into practice as quickly as possible to make sure that you're going to remember it. Generally, it takes about you to repeat something 20 times for you to get the learning embedded. Next, my next tip is then about making sure that you guys are utilizing the right tools within 365. I mean, as I touched on earlier, there's loads and loads of applications in there. And those applications, because of OneDrive, are very, very integrated. So what it does is it gives you the opportunity to look at your processes and start to go, well, actually, we don't need a third-party application to store all of our data. We can put that into OneDrive. I've worked with organizations previously that had a full Office 365 deployment, and what they did is they then paid Google to supply them with Google Drive, not realizing that they had OneDrive available. So they're paying about £400-500 a month, and we showed them OneDrive, and they went, but I've got this and I'm paying for that. And it was like, yes. And then you then get the benefits of utilizing OneDrive, such as being able to use something called Microsoft Flow, which is a very powerful workflow engine. So having a good understanding of what the abilities of these applications are and how you can integrate them into your existing processes really can save you not only a lot of time, but also a lot of money, because it means you don't have to then buy in additional platforms. And last but not least, as I said, 365 is constantly evolving. Microsoft generally will do, I'd say, about every 3 months they'll release a new program. And running constant refresher training and also kind of awareness training throughout your business is key. And this is where you can kind of start to leverage your super users to really get the most out of 365. And one of the key benefits of this is it starts to kind of enable knowledge sharing across your business. So you might have users who are really proficient in Excel, but they keep all the knowledge to themselves because they don't know there's a demand out there within their business. And having these kind of forums and promoting this education-based environment really does help push and drive your organization. And it also means that you are aware of the things that are coming up. One of the big things, for instance, in Excel is Microsoft are really pushing something called AI. And what this will do is you can submit a spreadsheet of data into the Microsoft Work AI engine, and what it will do is it will basically use the power of Microsoft's Azure servers and basically number crunch all of the data for you, and it can provide you with some incredibly kind of in-depth statistics around the numbers around the data that you've been looking at for years. This functionality, I think, was scheduled to come out first quarter 2019, but it's slowly being rolled out. And stuff like that, where you can get Excel and the cloud to work for you, is really key to utilizing OneDrive. I mean, or kind of 365. I mean, most probably one of my favorite bits of functionality, I'll just move my PowerPoint on here, is something called design. So if I want to create a new slide and I want to add and I'm not particularly good with PowerPoint, for instance, what I can do is I'm just going to go through and I'm just going to add a couple of icons into the PowerPoint. So I'm just going to grab a couple of these. And if you're not particularly proficient with PowerPoint, or you don't really know how to make something look pretty, if you go to the design function, and over here you'll have this little thing called design ideas. And what it will do is it will come up with a big pile of design ideas for that particular slide layout. And all of this is done utilizing the power of AI. So what it means is that individuals who aren't particularly creative, aren't really very confident with PowerPoint or doing something like that, can very quickly go through and create quite a nice and impactful set of slides without real knowledge around the application. So it's really, really useful and really, really powerful. And they really are my top productivity tips when it comes to utilizing 365. It's not just about understanding keyboard shortcuts. It's a combination of development, increasing your knowledge of the application, because once you've got that knowledge, you then know how to utilize it in a more effective way for both yourself and your business. And it really can save you an awful lot of time. In the demonstration where I just showed you that design function, I showed that to someone within the business about 2-3 weeks ago, when they were struggling to make their PowerPoint look a bit more impactful, and they're now essentially better on PowerPoint than me, which is slightly concerning. So AI might be putting me out of a job very, very quickly. But that's really it. I mean, one of the big things that Mirus are doing over the next on a monthly basis, we'll be delivering sessions like this where we'll be concentrating on key programs. I think Pippa's going to shout at me if I get the wrong one. I think it's either Forms or OneNote next month. So if you're interested in finding out a bit more about Forms or a bit more about OneNote, do feel free to join onto the session. But if anyone's got any questions, do feel free to fire them over in the Q&A section, and what I'll do is I'll put them up on the screen and I'll answer them as effectively as I can. So I've already got a couple. Okay, so from Peter Hack, how can a company understand what training their team will need? Well, really, when it comes to understanding what training your business needs, the key thing that the business needs to understand is being able to identify what their process is and where their processes are causing them pain. So, for instance, if you've got a process that involves a lot of Excel usage, potentially looking at, okay, we're using Excel in this particular way, we've got lots of spreadsheets that talk to each other, can we use additional functionality to basically enhance that process? Have we got process duplication? Are people going off and doing stuff with data that they don't need to be doing? Is there any wasted time? So understanding the nitty-gritty details of your process is key, because what you can then do is, when you start to identify your pain points within a process, then you can start to go, oh, well, this is causing me problems. Potentially we can start to look at how we can utilize training or development activities to then smooth those bumps out. It really is a case of the more you understand about your business and what your business are trying to do, the easier it is for a third-party trainer like myself to come in and put together a bespoke training plan. I hope that answers your question, Peter. Would like to know more about security of data within Office 365 and how to set up centrally controlled storage structures within the cloud. Okay, so Office 365 in terms of security is as physically secure as you can make it. With everything in IT, nothing is 100% secure. Microsoft, so OneDrive and the Office 365 environment have been going around for about 10 years, and in that 10 years they have never had a data breach. And by that I mean they've never been physically hacked. There has been cases where people have had silly passwords, like password 123, someone's got hold of their email address and has been able to gain access to their OneDrive. But if you're using a sensible password encryption message, it is nigh on impossible to get access to OneDrive. It uses, I think it's 1024-bit encryption. Every time you upload a file into OneDrive or OneDrive for Business or SharePoint, each file is individually encrypted. And then if you can imagine an electronic shredder shredding that file and spreading across loads of data centers, either across the UK or across the EU, depending on your data requirements. Some companies only want their data to be stored in the UK, others are a bit more relaxed and don't mind if it's all the way around the EU. But really what it's the key thing around the security side of it is you can control exactly who sees your data. Only the people that you share content with can see it. I mean, pretty much my entire life is run in OneDrive. All of my, if I just go, I'll just go and get my OneDrive up. So my entire work life as well. So this is my kind of business OneDrive. Everything I do is stored in OneDrive. All of my trading materials, all of my documentations, all of my content. And as I said, this is as secure as kind of cloud-based storage gets. Microsoft have invested billions upon billions into their 365 environment, so it's in their vested interest to consistently ensure that it's virus-free, data safe and secure. But again, we can have a more detailed conversation around that, Jamie, at a later date. Okay, so we then got Penny. Going back to the conversation that you created in co-authorized Word documents, does this get saved within the document, for example? If I email the file to someone else, can they see the previous conversations? As far as I'm aware, no, although I will need to go and double check. The only thing that is held in situ are basically comments. So if I was to highlight this, and if I go add new comment, I'd then get my comment window over to the right hand side. And what this would do is this essentially, so if I go needs editing, these comments here stay within the document. And then obviously other people can come along and reply to them. This is my preferred way of kind of handling changes in a document rather than using track changes, which can be quite invasive. And if someone isn't aware of how it works, can cause quite a lot of issues. But no, I'll double check on that one for you, Penny, and I'll have to get back to you. But as far as I know, no, the conversations are only kind of in real time at that point in time. Next, I've then got Claire. Does Office 365 offer training for each individual function? We are interested in all of them, but particularly SharePoint, Forms, and Reporting Tool. And the Reporting Tool, Power BI was the reporting tool. It does. There is something called the Microsoft University, which basically you can kind of subscribe to. If I remember correctly, it's quite expensive. My advice is, again, if it's just quite an informal conversation around bespoke training, then do feel free to get in contact with Mirus. Obviously, that's my sales bit, but really kind of my job within Mirus is to make sure that other companies that we work with, either directly or indirectly, are making the use of the platform. And also every company's utilization of applications, in some cases, they'll use it in a completely different way. But yeah, Microsoft does have a vast amount of documentation and e-learning, and like I said, I mean, one of my favorite resources is essentially kind of myself. I will go through and I'll generate an awful lot of documentation, which again, if you give me a contact, if you give me a shout, I'm more than happily share any of the stuff that I've collated directly from Microsoft, so to make your life a little bit easier. So I hope that answered that question in a roundabout way. Can we stop some documents from being downloaded from SharePoint where we find the settings for control this? That is a very good question, Tracy. SharePoint in itself is most probably one of the biggest applications that Microsoft have. By trade, I'm not a SharePoint trainer. I'm more of a kind of a 365 generalist. Generally, SharePoint trainers will specialize just on SharePoint. You can control it. Where do the options sit? I would not know. I generally deal with more the front end of 365. But yeah, it's very much a case of that you can definitely control who can access and who can download files within SharePoint. I will see if I can find out for you, and I'll make sure I take a note of that comment. Anything from anyone else? Okay. Docs on OneDrive, can downloads of files be seen, i.e. an audit trail? Yes, you can see who's accessed the document and when they've accessed it. If I remember correctly, you can't see when they've downloaded it. There is a versioning function within SharePoint which lets you have a much more granular overview of who's downloaded content and what changes were made and all that kind of built-in version control stuff. But OneDrive and SharePoint, although a lot of the functionality is shared, SharePoint goes into a lot more detail and really is more kind of geared towards getting that information. I assume that, from what you said earlier previously, that all cloud data remains in the EU. It's dependent on the setup that you have with Microsoft. For instance, some companies, I used to work in a company, a construction company that used to do a lot of MOD contracts. A lot of these MOD contracts said that any data had to be held within the UK. You couldn't go the data couldn't be held in any other country, mainly due to the fact that there's a lot of GDPR and all that kind of lovely stuff. It means that it's much more protected. But essentially, yeah, any data that's created within the UK will either only sit on a UK server or an EU server. If I remember correctly, you have to have a conversation with a Microsoft account manager to have that set up directly if you just want it UK only. But I know that any data you do store is generally only stored in the EU, as far as I know. I don't know how that's going to be affected by Brexit, mainly because I don't think anyone knows what Brexit's really going to be doing. Is there anything else from anyone? Oh, okay. Would you say that Word has better co-authoring functionality than other applications? We find that Excel is restricted, i.e. only one person can use desktop application, others have to use it online. Not really. I mean, the Word co-authoring function is really, really powerful. When we were doing the demonstration with Pippa and Sarah, I think Pippa was editing it through both the Word application, but there might just be something strange that you're doing in regards to not being able to access the same document at the same time via the desktop applications. It's definitely possible. Again, I can pick up once we've finished off, and I'll kind of see what if I can give you a quick hand to see if I can make that work for you. But it should definitely be able to use both desktop applications. But yeah, the co-authoring function is fantastic. Does it work 100% every single time? No, usually kind of, I'd say 99.9% of the time it works flawlessly. And whenever I have to do a demonstration of it, that's usually when it will go a bit peak-tong. But it's still very new functionality. So Microsoft is still kind of ironing out all the bugs, so to speak. Anything from anyone else? Oh yes, sorry, there was another question. Do I do training on Teams? We're using it, but it's sporadic. Teams, and it would like to have a formal rollout. We do at the moment internally within Mirus. We are going to be rolling out Teams in March. So I will be creating the training program and all the supporting documentation for our business, which then essentially is how we deploy training. I'll do everything internally, get all the feedback, get all the comments, and then we'll go to offer it as an external service. But yeah, Teams is a very different type of product to Skype. It has all of the functionality, but because of how it's worked and how Microsoft have marketed it, it can be very confusing. And again, when I do my session on Teams, we'll have a very similar kind of session like this. Hopefully we can kind of answer any questions related to Teams, but again, it's also still very early days with Teams. I think it's parity in terms of functionality with Skype for Business. At the moment, Microsoft are really pushing it. My advice would be potentially hold back a little bit and wait for the application to mature a little bit, just because it's still the desktop app can still be a little bit buggy. But no, I mean, as a tool, it's really good. It's just that it's still growing in terms of functionality. Okay, I've got another question. Is it so powerful using it daily but haven't done a formal rollout? Teams is really powerful. It's just a case of there's not a massive amount of material that's been provided by Microsoft, and at the moment they're in this kind of limbo state where they're still kind of have Skype for Business and people are comfortable with using it, they have been using it for a long time, and now all of a sudden they've kind of gone, oh, and now go off and use Teams. So for instance, if I open my Skype client, which I'll just move over here, you'll see it's got a lovely message saying Skype for Business will be upgraded to Microsoft Teams, without really putting any context around what Teams is and how Teams can be utilised. But again, we'll have more material around what Teams is in the very near future. I'm more than happy to kind of pick up with you and kind of discuss how we can kind of launch that. Historically, I've done quite a lot of Skype for Business deployments, so kind of all singing, all dancing, kind of across vast multinational. So more than happy to help if I can. Anything from anyone else? To Padlet, Trello. Jamie, I don't know what either of those applications are, so you've stumped me on those ones. Thank you very much for showing me up in the session. But again, Microsoft are kind of consistently looking at their application ecosphere. But again, I can pick up directly with you on whatever those applications are, and I can see if I can find a Microsoft alternative. Any other questions? I'm just aware we're starting to overrun. Yeah. Okay, it looks like no one else has got any other questions. So a massive thank you for joining. I hope you found the session useful. For those of you that would like a copy of the session, please let me know, and I can ping that out to you. If anyone's got any questions related to training or just training in general, do feel free just to ping me a quick email. More than happy to pick up. And other than that, thank you very much for your time and have a lovely afternoon. Thank you very much for your time, guys. Goodbye.